Hey there, everybody. Welcome back. And we're going to be looking at technical writing for games today. So, a few things about this. You need to consider that documentation is not always written by the person who's going to be using it. So, documentation should be considered that it is for developers and that is a separate role than that of the designer. And this is not for marketing, so you shouldn't create something that is flowery and full of rich language that makes the vision feel emotive, but you should provide physical clarity that allows it to be well understood and clear. It's not about telling people why what you've decided is a good idea or what the accomplishment of those decisions are. It's just about relating the decisions. So if you decide that a door opens always away from the player, you don't need to explain for the forward mobility of the player to allow ease of motion. You just say doors open away from the player. And then that's the decision. So the developers know, okay, this is what it is. If they have a question about why it is, then you have to have a discussion, but the documentation isn't the place for the discussion, and you don't need to include justifications in there. And ideally, documentation is considered complete when it describes the full integrated experience, not just a collection of parts that could be put together. So if you have incoherent ideas or partial concepts, consider that is ideation, but it is not game documentation. Treat them relative in terms of how you're organizing and presenting that information. The length of documentation should always be as long as necessary and as short as possible. There's no reason to have a long document just for the sake of having a big document. Our GDD is 400 pages long. It doesn't actually tell you whether or not it's a good GDD. The content should be as specific as is practical to meet out the vision, meaning that if you have a specific idea for the game, then you need to make sure you articulate that well. If you have a general idea and you're really comfortable with a broad range of interpretations of that idea, and then you can kind of work it out through iterative design, then document to that level of detail. Just be sure that your documentation reflects the clarity of the vision that you have. Otherwise, you're going to get somebody else's interpretation, which could be different than what you were hoping for. And when you look at the detail of what goes into the document, the content scale of how much document you have is going to be determined by the variety of content that you have and the detail of the use of that content. So if you have one character and they have one outfit, then you have one section in terms of a character design. But if you have 9,000 different character customization options and they're able to be attended to with, RGB values that can modify the individual tone of specific aspects, and they can apply patterns and gradients and things like that, then suddenly the depth needs to be articulated more clearly as well. And so the character customization section isn't just here's what the character is, it's multiple pages of interactive interfaces and design choices, limitations, source of material, things like that. So consider your documentation is going to reflect the scope of your idea. When we get down to clarity of technical writing, understand there is no such thing as a perfect document, right? If I give a perfect document to two different teams, they're going to produce exactly the same outcome. If I give a really good document to two different teams, they're going to produce almost exactly the same game, but there's going to be some variation in interpretation. And so you need to consider what's good enough for the documentation that you're creating. And good enough is really going to be based off of the relationship with the developers to know what level of clarity they're going to interpret to mean a particular thing or where they're going to seek feedback and direction from the creative director. So considering the team that's going to be working on this, and if it's a solo effort, obviously that's pretty straightforward, but you should still have good documentation. But the idea of what you're writing in terms of clarity, the language that you use is going to support that clarity. If you use the right words and they're interpreted in the right way, then it's going to lead to a better outcome that's more aligned with the intended vision. If you use more ambiguous language or you're using words that people don't understand or presenting it in a way that they don't understand, then that's going to create problems as well. So clarity very much matters. In terms of the nuts and bolts of building documentation, formatting is actually very important. When someone is struggling to process the information that's presented to them, then it actually creates an interpretive barrier. They can't get to the idea as well because they're struggling with the way that information is being presented to them. So we talk about this. We'll look in a more tangible context. We want things to be single spaced within a paragraph. So when you're writing this, it shouldn't be something that's written to expect notes in the margin. We live in a mostly digital age now, and so people can add notes to the side through various means in a PDF or a Word doc, and double space between paragraphs. So to go look at this here, this is single space within a paragraph and then double spaced between paragraphs. Bulleted lists for associated details means things that go together are going to be in a bulleted list, and a numbered list for things that are ordered detail. If it's a bulleted list, we need bananas, milk, and bread. It doesn't matter what order you get them in, you just need all of those things. I need to go to the gas station, the grocery store, and the car dealership, right? Those are three things, and I'm going to do them in a particular order, and so the order matters. So to come down here, if I have item types, stat buffs, grenades, trinkets, and baubles, right? These are different types of items. Doesn't matter what order I present them in, these are just the different types. If I'm talking about the level progression, players start in the forest, they move to the ice cave, they eventually get to the lava island, resulting in them ending in the elephant graveyard. This is an ordered list, and so numbers matter here in terms of the progression. We want to, where possible, use tables. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. A table can save you a lot of unnecessary writing. So if you consider these paragraphs here, this interactive object use mapping table, it talks about the type of objects and the resulting action. Here we have something that's describing the same thing, but it's in a paragraph form. So if I want to get the information of a particular item and a particular resulting action, I have to read through this paragraph and parse out that information, as opposed to just finding the item here and then resulting in the particular action. I can find it immediately mapped. So I can look through things a bit more expediently. So this is for use. While you might be able to provide more nuance and clarity in a paragraph, if that clarity is needed to understand what the resulting action is, then you can always specify those somewhere else. They can look them up individually. But the tables can allow me to more quickly reference the material I need. All images have relevance-based captions. If you include an image in your document, there should be a reason for that. So here I say this is reference art showing distortion effects around the shield area. If I just say shield effect, I don't know if the person's trying to replicate exactly this thing, or if they're trying to imitate, the elements in the environment that are reflecting off of this. It's not clear. So if I say reference art showing distortion effects around shield area, so I can see that there's a little bit of distortion and the shielded area has some refraction being applied to it. So now I know this image is showing me to what extent I should be doing this as an artist. No widows or orphans. Some people have never heard this term before, but what this means is that you have a sentence that starts on one page and ends on another. If you want to resolve this, there are options inside of Word where you can right click and go to paragraph, and you come over to line breaks, say keep with next. Depending on what you have selected, it will produce different results. Right, so it'll bump the whole thing down here. The general rule is that you don't want any sentence to be cut off, and you don't want to leave a sentence by itself. So if this wasn't here, this sentence being by itself would be problematic. You can just take this and we'll press here, Control Enter, and that'll bump it down. So now I have two sentences on this page and two sentences on this page, or more than two sentences on this page, so it's fine. If you have one sentence hanging by itself, then you bump the additional sentence down. If that leaves one sentence by itself on the page above, then you bump the whole paragraph down. If that leaves a header by itself, then you bump the whole section down. So really, we're just allowing the reader to have clarity about what it is they're reading in the context of what it relates to. All right, and then we're going to include contextualized information in the header and footer of any document. So you can see here I have a 3-item table. So I just made a table. This is center aligned, this is right aligned, and then I hid the borders. Game name italicized, document name. So if I wanted, I could make this GDD and make this Epic game name, and then all right. And then so when I have this, I have the context of what it is that I'm reading. And then at the bottom of the page, I also want to be able to have my page numbers. So if I have the page number here in Word, it's as simple as going to header and footer, doing page number. You can see there's header, top of page, bottom of page. If I go to bottom of page, I get simple, which is just a single number. I can do X, which shows X and then page, or I can scroll down and I can get X of Y, which is always useful because it tells you where you are within the document. And I just chose this one, right? Page 3 of 5, and then there you go. And so this gives me all the contextualized information I need inside of a document. If you have a document that's probably larger than 20 pages, you're going to want to include a table of contents, and that has its own set of rules, but you can look those up as they become necessary for you. All right, for the grammar considerations, we want to make sure that we're using active language. Sometimes people will write passive language, things like the door opens. Like doors don't open by themselves, so the door opens when players interact with it. That's true. Players open the door by interacting with it is a more active voice statement. So having the player being the thing that's performing the action be the first thing that's stated. This becomes more problematic and more complex structures. The level ends when all 4 objectives get completed. Objectives don't get completed, players complete objectives. And the level doesn't just end, there's specific events that cause it to end. Players end the level by completing all 4 objectives. All right. Avoid infinitives. So this is just a clarity issue. So an infinitive is when you have the to. So players find the locked door and have to press the security override to open it. So I have double infinitive here versus players find the locked door and press the security override opening it. So rather than have to is like an implication of future action, I can say they press, which is a present tense, the security override, opening it. This is again a present tense verb, so I'm getting rid of the infinitives. And for clarity's sake, we could just write players activate the security override, unlocking the door. This is what they do, and this is the result. So clarity can always be enhanced to an extent. Never mention the author or reader. If you say I, we, us, you, your, yours, this is a problem because you don't know if the person reading it is the actual relevant actor that you're trying to address. Because when you're writing the document, you're typically writing about the player. Developers aren't the player. They can be the player, but that's not who you're writing to or about in that particular context. No examples needed for there, just don't do that. Using present tense, so active language in present tense tends to result in the same outcome. Structure sentences using subject, verb, object where possible. So if we talk about present tense here, if I have in the game, players will interact with various elements within the world that are designed to enhance the immersive experience. One, you're justifying the actions here, which is not appropriate for the documentation. But I could take this whole paragraph and change it to present tense and remove flowery language, and it gets down to this. So this is in Word, 112 words versus 46 words. Not only is all the information that's relevant packed into a smaller area so that I can find what I need faster, but I'm also going to be less exhausted when I'm done reading it, so I'm more inclined to read the rest of the document. And that's what you want from your developers, is for them to read thoroughly. So providing less than half the content to be able to get that result is going to be an important step in making sure clarity is achieved within your documentation. The Oxford comma is an important point for clarity. The Oxford comma is just the comma that comes before the and in a series of objects. So if you have 3 things, then you want to make sure that the Oxford comma comes before the and before the third thing. Here's just an example. Players complete level by finishing NPC quest. Specifically, defeating the 2 gang leaders, helping Mom bake cookies, and helping Dad with the lawn. This sounds like helping Mom bake cookies is one of the gang leaders that we need to defeat, and helping Dad with the lawn is one of the gang leaders we need to defeat. Versus if I have a comma and a comma here, I'm saying specifically defeating 2 gang leaders, helping Mom bake cookies, and helping Dad with the lawn. These are now 2 gang leaders and 2 different activities that will allow me to finish the level. So in this context, consider that the Oxford comma always adds clarity. Not having it, while it may save you a comma on page, is always opening up the door for potential confusion. So if you always use the Oxford comma when in a series, then you can see the Oxford comma missing and know that and means that it is a clarifying statement about the preceding comma separated declaration. All right, so with that, I hope this expands your understanding of what technical writing for games looks like and gives you some tools on how to address that. If you find that working within Word, you're not able to see these things so readily, you can always go to your options, and then you can come down to your proofing, and down here under settings, if you scroll down, you'll find there are a number of things that can be turned on. Passive voice for one of them, there's infinitives, there's a number of other elements that are going to be considered down here that you might want to enable. So if you want to have better writing, let Word tell you where you're making mistakes. It'll underline things with green. You can go back and revisit them and even get suggestions to solve them. I hope that helps you in your pursuit of better documentation. So go out there and keep building.